Good midnight viewers. Welcome to the Baroness Midnight Horror Review. This is an 18 plus recommended channel. It's for avid horror enthusiasts. This midnight, we are going to talk about horror movies you don't know about. This might not be true for you. I'd love to hear in the comments if you've seen any of these, but these are some horror movies that I love that I find a lot of people don't know about. I know that it took me a lot of years to find these horror movies. I think it's been about the last year that I've watched a lot of these. These are, I would say, for the more spicy horror lovers. They're not for someone who doesn't love horror movies. They are more disturbing content, I would say, for me anyway. These are more deeply disturbing movies that I've found with some really intensely disturbing content. So if you like that kind of movie, as I do, I would love for you to join me tonight and listen to my reviews.
Tilt, 2017. Written and directed by Kasra Farahani. Starring Joseph Cross and Jesse Hodges.
The first movie I'd like to share my thoughts on with you is a movie I found called Tilt. This movie is streaming, I believe, free on Tubi. I just kind of came across it by chance. I hadn't had it recommended to me. I found it and it was a total trippy thrill ride and I really enjoyed it. It's basically a story about expected parenthood. So it's a couple who are expecting a baby. The main character is going to be the father, and he is a documentary filmmaker, and he is very obsessive, and he basically forms a really severe obsession with his next kind of darkly disturbing content, real life content documentary he's making. He becomes quite obsessed and loses himself in the obsession. It's very, like I said, I say trippy. It is very much psychedelic, a lot of it for me. I felt like I was on a trip. There's definitely surrealism and a lot of parts where I didn't know what was real anymore, and especially as the movie goes along. I love being taken on a journey, and I really felt that you're with this main character through this dark obsession. And I was really disturbed. I mean, some of the content is about parenthood, right? About children. So there was some stuff that was like really dark and upsetting. They didn't show anything that I remember that was, it was more the stuff that was surreal that they didn't show that he was thinking, and the way they did it was brilliant. It was really, like I said, it's a journey. So I really enjoyed watching Tilt. I would love to hear what you say about it. The actors were phenomenal. The lead, he was just perfect for this kind of role. I don't know if I'd seen him before. He looked a little bit familiar. But all in all, I just really enjoyed this movie. It really disturbed me. It's what I like in horror. So again, it's Tilt. I think it's on Tubi. You should definitely check this one out.
Emergency, 2022. Based on a short film of the same name. Directed by Carey Williams and written by K.D. Davila. Starring R.J. Cycler and Donald Else.
Emergency primarily centers around systematic violence against BIPOC communities. I do want to mention this as a content warning for the movie. This is a very devastating and true reality for a lot of people. So I do want to just mention it as a content warning for uh, it might not be something that some people even want to watch. I think this one is on Prime, and it may be something that you have seen. Again, it's one I've talked to some people about, and I was surprised that a lot of people I know hadn't seen it because I really like this movie and highly, highly recommend it. I believe it's on Prime for streaming, and I think that you might be able to find it some other places. But this is a movie that I think is how I would like to see the direction of horror going. As I've said, horror is my absolute favorite genre of movies, and there's a lot of psychological and a lot of personal reasons behind that. I've spent my life loving horror movies, and there's also nostalgia involved for me. When I was little, it's a fond memory having, my older sibling letting me watch the scariest movies and staying up or with friends and really being scared. I've lost that now as my beliefs and things change. So what gets me is real life horror. Also, I mean, I've mentioned this before and it will just come into play in most of my reviews, but horror is clearly very problematic. Uh, and for me, it's not the horror content because I think there's a space for that creatively to play with that in all sorts of ways. But it's more all of the other societal stuff that comes into play. So I really love seeing new horror that's coming out that's changing that agenda. I call it real life horror because this is real life horror. This one, I don't even know, honestly, if it's under horror. It might be in another review I'm doing soon about my favorite horror movies that aren't horror genre movies. But it might be horror. And regardless, I was really disturbed by it. But it is so well done. It's basically about a group of young individuals who are faced with a serious emergency. They find, maybe after a party, they find a young female in their living space who's unconscious. And these group of individuals who are kind of the main characters of the film are faced with this emergency. They're all male and they're all within the BIPOC community. So basically, the whole movie is about them trying to navigate this emergency, knowing that calling the cops is not an option. What that might look like for them having this young female individual who's white and looks quite privileged, and she's lying on the ground. It's very well done, and it is horrific. It's a reality, and the way it's written and the actors are just phenomenal. It has some action and some different things throughout it that's really good, but overall it's just a truly horrific, well done movie.
Bloodline, 2018. Directed by Henry Jacobson and written by Avra Fox Learn. Starring Sean William Scott and Mariela Garinja.
This movie, Bloodline, really pleasantly surprised me. I again found it on a whim. I saw that the actor Stifler was in it. I call him Stifler because this guy got really typecasted in my mind, but it's the actor from, if you've ever seen a very silly series, American Pie, from maybe the 90s. He played kind of I don't know, I don't even know how to sum up Stifler. Maybe the worst kind of guy, but the high school kind of stereotypical, maybe jock kind of personality. So I've always seen this actor as such. And I have seen a few movies since and have seen him trying to break out of that typecast. But I read about this movie, I was just scrolling through, and it sounded really good to me. Basically, Bloodline is again about an expecting parent, a father, who happens to be a pretty brutal serial killer and with some mommy issues. And mom is involved in the family and the him and his partner's life. And it is brutal, gore, intense, disturbing scenes. There's like a couple scenes I've never seen in a horror movie before, like graphic, gory scenes, which I really enjoy. As a horror connoisseur, that's the kind of stuff I like. But this one is definitely a gory one. It's really gross content, and I love it. And Sean William Scott, uh, aka Stifler, is incredible in it. He is really committed to this character, and he's honestly terrifying. And I really like to see duality in actors like that. So I loved watching him do this role, and I thought it was a really kind of new idea and something really dark and disturbing to think about. So I highly recommend the movie Bloodline, and I'd love to hear what you think about it.
Excision, 2012, directed and written by Richard Bates Jr., starring Anna Lynn McCord.
The plot of this movie is basically a coming of age kind of story. It's about a teenage girl who's has a very dysfunctional family, an abusive religious mother, um, but she's very clearly neurodiverse. Her character is, which I feel all sorts of problems around, but also for me, it made the character deeply relatable, uh, because I'm now a grown, just deeply disturbed neurodiverse man that was once a deeply disturbed neurodiverse child and teenage girl. So there was just so much relatable to her character for me. She was so good. The actor who played her was really good at playing her. She also, one of my favorite genres is a slow burn, and this had a very similar formula in that it was one mood through, an hour and 45 minutes, and then the last 15 minutes are absolutely horrific and something I can never forget in a really disturbing way. But it with this formula, they used comedy. So a lot of this movie I would classify actually as a comedy with some aspects and some moments of really dark, disturbing content and really gory, horrific, psychosexual, surreal kind of stuff, which is honestly my very favorite category of horror is, and any kind of movie is surrealism and psychosexual, because that's just how my brain likes it. But this really filled my brain with that element. It has some of the best psychosexual gore scenes I've ever seen, some body horror and stuff like that. It's really artistic. Even the opening scene of this movie is, to me, really beautiful to watch. But also, like I said, there's something really relatable about it. And I wouldn't be surprised if other horror fans felt misunderstood growing up or different than others or might be neurodiverse. So this really spoke to me in my in those ways. There was such relatable content to me and such humor. There's some scenes with her eating at the table with her family, and also the abuse of her mom she doesn't take. So she's very clever and funny and always has something to say back to her mom, and it's quite humorous to watch. But then also I can laugh, and that might be some trauma response, but like the content of even the fights or who the mom is, she's truly awful. And um, there's a lot of stuff she says that's really upsetting to hear, but the way that it's kind of handled and the music and the mood and the tone of the movie throughout has a really strong humor element. I was laughing through so much of it, and it also made me feel more committed to the movie and kind of more in with the character, who the main character, which is why I think the way that it went and the turn that it took, which is a really drastic turn, was so upsetting for me as a viewer. And also because I related to this character on so many levels. It was really a dark journey to for her to start discovering her own darkness, really. Um, I mean, I would almost compare this movie to Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret, but it's like, Are you there, Satan? It's me. Like, I don't know. It has this element of classic coming of age movies mixed with something so horrific, and what I found truly upsetting. It took me a while to shake it off, actually. So, if you like to be shooken up, if you like this kind of really dark delve, dark dive into something really disturbing, I really recommend that you check this movie out if you haven't. And again, I'd love to hear about it.
You Won't Be Alone, 2022. Written and directed by Goran Stolevsky. Starring Naomi Rapace.
Won't Be Alone is a fantasy based horror, which I love, and incorporates folklore. So it has this element, I guess you could compare to movies like The Witch very loosely in just the folklore element of the movie. But it's mixed with this uh, really kind of magical to me and very dark and gory folklore about a witch. And I don't want to give too much about the plot because you kind of just have to see it, is how I feel about this movie. That's how I went in. I may have read about it that it's good and I like the actor in it, and so I thought I'd check it out, but I couldn't have expected what I witnessed. It's a movie about a witch, and a witch that kind of goes through. It's kind of like reincarnation almost, where but it's like conscious reincarnation is the fantasy around this. But there's a lot of cruel gore in my view, especially like because it's fantasy and there's this witch, and I really loved her and the stuff that they did with her and how grotesque she was, and uh, but it is truly just heart wrenching because it takes this person's life through many bodies and many human experiences and um, many times, and all of the tragedy and things that happen in just humans' lives, and it kind of goes through a bunch of them. I'm really not selling this movie so well. I don't know, but but if but it's really it's really moving. I found it beautiful to watch, and like I said, just the actor is so amazing, and there's many actors involved because this person's going through many people and many bodies basically, but it does just kind of um, reflect on different types of human experience and tragedy. And it does so in a fantasy lens, which makes it a bit of magic to me, and also a horror lens, which brings out the darkness, but also kind of covers it up because there's like a cool gore witch. But it's kind of this roller coaster, is how I felt. I was taken on a bit of a fantasy roller coaster, and I really love going in these realms of blending horror with other genres because, and I think some of these movies I've mentioned tonight do that really, really well, because you can go places you can't go in reality. And that's what I loved so much about this movie, is it did that so well. I highly recommend You Won't Be Alone. Thank you for joining me this midnight for the Baroness Midnight Horror Review. I hope to see you again. I'll be making many more videos and hopefully get better with my quality and editing. But please, please, please subscribe to my channel. Thumbs up, very important. Thumb up. Like my videos, share my videos, and I really would love to see some comments. I would love to know if you've seen any of the movies that I've reviewed this evening, or if you're planning to, if any stood out to you, or if you have any more hidden gems. Please add to the comments. I will definitely comment back and read them. This is my favorite part of being a horror movie lover, is finding other horror movie lovers and talking horror. It's really my very favorite activity. So stay tuned and good midnight.